Hey guys! Welcome to another episode of Ellie Talks About Mental Health and waves her hands all up. As promised, this week we're going to, later on in this week, still Mental Health Awareness Week by the way, happy Mental Health Awareness Week if you haven't seen me already this week. We're going to discuss something a little bit lighter. I was thinking today we would sort of emphasise the importance of trigger warnings to people. I've tried to always put them in my videos so far, where things that might be triggering are concerned. Topics that may be triggering to a person, and today we're going to talk a little bit just about what that means, because it's become a bit of a joke and almost a meme in society, and I think it's important to be able to separate the meme from the reality, because I love a good meme, as my friends will know if you know me in real life. Love a good meme, nothing wrong with a good meme, but it's important to know when is appropriate to use a meme in a certain situation and when something is actually applying to something that might be a real trigger for a person. For example, triggered has become a bit of just a fair use for anything that mildly upsets a person. I see a lot of even advertisement from personalities such as Tommy Lauren, who've come out with a range of t-shirts that states "Stay triggered snowflakes," and how this might be offensive to people with mental health. I guess it could be considered offensive. It's not aimed at us, it's aimed at the people on the other side of our political spectrum. But again, the word snowflakes is one that I really disagree with as well, because it's implying that there's something wrong with you if you find things offensive, if you are sensitive to certain topics. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being sensitive to certain topics. It could be for a perfectly legitimate reason. A lot of people have PTSD around certain things. I'll talk a bit about my own triggers in this video. So, ironically, trigger warning for talking about things like eating disorders, weight, fluctuating weight, calorie counting, and things like that. I would say trigger warnings are essentially you're giving a content warning for what's going to be in the post or the discussion, the blog post, the presentation that you're about to present, or even just in general conversation, just giving someone a heads up, is it okay if we talk about this? Just in case they're in a place where actually reliving this thing or bringing that up right now, I just don't know if that's something I'm going to be able to process without becoming anxious, having a panic attack, becoming upset. And so for me, I've had experiences where those have just been non-existent, and experiences where people have been very conscientious of placing trigger warnings where they are needed. I'll give a few examples of those. A lot of people are met with, well, real life doesn't have trigger warnings. It actually does. Specific shops have certain demographics. People won't be allowed in back rooms of certain shops, or allowed to shop in certain shops, buy certain things if they're not of a certain age. Films are rated for certain ages. Rides are given instructions, do not use this if your heart is susceptible to, heart disease, if you're pregnant, if you are likely to have this kind of attack, if you're likely to have this. It's kind of the same thing with triggers, if you're likely to be, engaged in a negative way by a certain material or a certain topic, you might not want to go further than this point. It's just giving you that heads up, that warning. And I've been part of a lot of communities that have been really conscientious of this. The old classic we used to use in high school, or at least a few of my friends and I used, was called Recover Your Life, and it was a mental health kind of community blog that brought people together, and people could talk on this forum about issues they were having in their life. People would sort of feed back to you, and whenever you started one new blog post that was, you could title it with, oh, this is going to contain so-and-so, a bit about this, a certain mental health condition, maybe a certain medication, maybe you're talking about certain symptoms. It can apply to anything, really. I think a very recent good example I found was a group I was part of. I was invited to a group called Girl Talk, which is basically a forum for entirely females, and it's basically a platform that allows you to speak about mental health, anything from job-related things to relationship-related things, just basically physical health, something that's getting you down. It could be loneliness, it could be something occupationally, it could be anything, basically. And there's always an opportunity to say what's going to be in your post just in case it was to affect a person. And it really did, it even made me think. It was a learning experience for me and very informative for me, just to read about, well, even something that you could like perceive as being positive to you could be considered negative to someone who's going through something similar but on the opposite end of the spectrum. So someone, if you're having a lot of success in your job, say, there may be someone who's unemployed, on sabbatical, struggling to get work, signed off work for their mental health, and to see people succeeding in a job or doing really well, you might just want to title that so they don't enter into that post and think, oh, I don't really know what I'm getting myself into, read it, and become quite low in mood. And that's just a small example. For myself, I would say, and again, trigger warning for talking about eating disorders here, it really triggers me and sort of doesn't cause me to relapse, but it brings me back to a low place that I feel like I've kind of overcome when I see things like before and after pictures on Facebook. So someone before their diet and then after their diet, and they're like, this is how much weight I've lost. It was particularly bad around Christmas time this year. I actually put up a big post in the Girl Talk forum just about literally radio shows were encouraging listeners to call in and tell them how much weight they'd lost or weight they'd gained over Christmas and what their New Year's resolution was. Like, oh, how much weight are you going to lose this year? How much weight did you put on over the Christmas period? Because, you know, everyone's put on so much weight. I hate those Halifax adverts, the ones that are like Crimbo, Limbo. I don't know if you saw them when they were on, but they were awful. They were basically two women who I'm sure are perfectly lovely in real life, but in this advert they were just singing about how lazy they'd been, how much weight they'd put on, and it really made me consider my own sort of Christmas choices. And it's a holiday, everyone takes it easy on the holidays, but I was really beating myself up about it and thinking, oh god, I've made all the unhealthy choices and brought myself to this really bad place. But I'm in a better place now. But again, that was quite triggering for me just to hear everyone talking about, oh, we've all put on so much weight and look at our befores and our afters and look at how much difference there is. So for me, I would say things like that. Also calorie counting. I've often been friends with people that use like calorie counting apps, and I just prefer, obviously I'm supportive of that friend and their choices, but I prefer to not engage in that myself. I'll look at theirs, I'll discuss their diets and things with them, but it's not something that I would really want to take on board. I take on board health advice from friends, especially ones that clearly know what they're talking about, but I try not to obsess over it because my mind has a tendency to do that. So that's an example of what would be a trigger warning for myself. It's always worth thinking about if you're going to put up a post, if you're talking to a friend that's something particularly serious or something that you think might apply to their own life, just saying, are you sure it's okay if we talk about this? If you know the friend quite well and you know it's something you've discussed in the past, maybe not as important. But if it's something you're releasing out into the world, for example, last week we touched on the issue of suicide, and that's something that's particularly triggering for a lot of individuals, and there's absolutely no shame in that. So I, of course, put out that trigger warning before I started talking about that topic, just so I didn't bring anyone to a place where they were relapsing or they'd overcome a certain obstacle in their life and it was bringing them back a step, because I would never want to do that. Recovery is hard and we've all made it really far, and I would never want to bring someone back a step. So that's what trigger warnings are all about, guys. They're just about helping people maintain their progress in their journey without bringing them back, without causing anyone to relapse. It's just about being conscientious of things that could affect people. Even success stories could be perceived as, oh god, I'm not doing as well, maybe I should be doing this, maybe I should be doing that for my life. Just titling things in a way that says this is what the content is going to be. It depends what kind of groups you're part of, it depends what the post is you're going to put up on Facebook, but sometimes it's good just to give people an idea of what is about to come. You know, this could be graphic, it could be involving violence, for example, that's a more extreme version. If it's someone who's been in an abusive relationship and it's about abusive relationships. If it's about just relationships in general, this might be someone who's had a lot of PTSD and trauma to do with relationships. Those are just some examples, but it's all about separating memes from reality. Yes, it's funny to use the triggered meme, for some people, and that's fine. Memes are fine. But the reality is that being triggered by something can cause PTSD, it can cause relapses in real life. It's not just about the silly faces that I see on people's like third wave feminism posts, which is a choice. But and I'm not going to say it annoys me too much, but I do see an awful lot of it on the internet. And as long as people are able to separate the meme from the reality of the situation, then that is fine. So yeah, just a wee short video today, just emphasising the importance of trigger warnings out in the world. I love you guys loads, and I hope to see you next time. Happy Mental Health Awareness Week, guys. Love you loads. See you next time. Bye.